God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege Program. Explosive hearing on Capitol Hill today as Peter Strzok, one of the top agents in charge of both the Clinton email investigation and the Trump-Russia investigation, was testifying before Congress, and it was a quite heated event. We're going to go over some of the quotes as part of this Fox News story, but I want to begin with a definition so that we're all on the same page. This is from a DuckDuckGo search. If you don't know what DuckDuckGo is, I highly recommend it. It's a search engine that, in my opinion, performs just a little bit better than Google. But I guess this is a defining or a definition website that's partnered with DuckDuckGo called Wordnik, and they're citing the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, and they define bias as, and obviously we're going to be skipping the one that concerns quilting, a preference or an inclination, especially one that inhibits impartial judgment. I want to call your attention to this definition. It says a preference or an inclination, and you could full stop right there, because especially means that a characteristic following this what's the word I'm looking for? Following this in this context is undeniably an example of the word that you're defining. So a bias is a preference or an inclination, and it's an unquestionable bias if that preference or inclination inhibits impartial judgment. Now, that doesn't mean that your bias has, that your preference has to inhibit impartial judgment in order to be a bias. I just wanted to point that out as we get into this story from Fox News, because Peter Strzok has a definition of bias. He takes a page straight out of Jim Comey's playbook. You know, Jim Comey has a definition of, it was either a definition of classified or a definition of leak that is unlike anybody else's definition in the United States. And Peter Strzok seems to have a definition of bias that is different from anybody else's in the United States. Now let's take a look, and we'll focus on the quotes rather than the commentary. But we'll start with his opening paragraph. FBI official Peter Strzok's first public hearing tumbled into a rancorous and heated political fracas. I think that just means circus. On Thursday, as Republicans clashed with Democrats, as well as the former investigator, over his anti-Trump texts, and even threatened contempt for initially refusing to answer questions on the Russia probe. Now let's scroll, let's get into the first bit of quotes from this hearing. And we'll begin with this one. Okay, so Representative Goodlot, I think that's how it's pronounced, has asked a question of Peter Strzok that Strzok is refusing to answer. And he says, Mr. Strzok, you're under subpoena and required to answer the question. And as Fox says here, this touched off a heated dispute. And I heard what I believe is this exact exchange, and it is difficult to hear who is saying what. If you don't know, if you don't have a face to go with the voice of these representatives, then it's impossible to know who is saying what, except for you can tell who's advocating for who, and that's how you know who the Republicans are and who the Democrats are. Let's scroll down. I'm hoping to get some questions and responses here as most of our video. Goodlot said that at the conclusion of the hearing, Strzok would be subject to recall to allow the committee to consider proceeding with a contempt citation. Hours after a break in the hearing, Strzok returned to say that he was advised by FBI counsel that he could, in fact, answer Gowdy's earlier question. After Gowdy asked it again, Strzok replied, "I don't recall. I'd have to check the case file." So Strzok, by his own admission, doesn't have a perfect memory. I would like to point that out to you right here, because it's going to become important as we read another quote from Strzok later on in this paragraph, or in this story rather. Strzok does not have a perfect memory. He cannot recall every single detail of his time with the FBI. Strzok maintained that he did not remember. It was one of many throughout the hours-long hearing, which began with Strzok asserting that his political opinions were rooted in deep patriotism. Strzok said in his prepared opening statement that he has never allowed personal opinions to affect his work, that he knew information during the campaign that had the potential to damage then-candidate Trump, but never contemplated leaking it to the press. Congratulations! You did the bare minimum of your job description. Every single government employee is required to take training that dictates you are not allowed to reveal classified information to anybody for non-work related reasons. And there are a slew of information types that are classified. For instance, Health and Human Services employees are required to take training that tells them that your personal information as a patient of Health and Human Services is classified, and they are not allowed to share it with anyone or use it for any reason that is not work-related. And Strzok has stated that he did the bare minimum of his job by saying that he never contemplated leaking that information to the press. Congratulations, you did what you were expected to do. You know what I give my dog for doing what she expects to do? I give her a bite of meat. You get a congratulations, Strzok. Would you like a cookie? Is what I'm trying to say here. But something else that I want to remind you of, just a few lines earlier, moments ago, I pointed out to you that Strzok, by his own admission, does not have a perfect memory. Strzok stated that he could not recall a detail concerning a question that Trey Gowdy had asked him. He said he would have to consult with his case file. So Peter Strzok does not have a perfect memory, yet he asserts that he has, quote, never, unquote, allowed personal opinions to affect his work. Now, the left constantly tries to assert to us that your unconscious bias influences your decision-making without you even realizing it. That your unconscious bias dictates the way that you treat people, and you don't even realize that you're biased towards these people. So on those grounds alone, how can Peter Strzok assert that he has never allowed personal opinions to affect his work? I guess you could say that Strzok unconsciously allowed his personal opinions to affect his work, but that would mean that he has made a false statement. I don't think that simply making a false statement is perjury, but lying to the Senate while under oath is certainly perjury. So either Strzok has unconscious bias that he's unaware of, that he's allowed to affect his work, and he's made a false statement to Congress, or Strzok does have a perfect memory and is lying to Congress when he says that he can't remember details about some of his casework. Either way, Strzok has just perjured himself with this statement. If there are any legal eagles out there, let me know if I'm wrong about this. Like many people, Strzok says, like many people, I had and expressed personal political opinions during an extraordinary presidential election. Many contained expressions of concern for the security of our country. Strzok added that these opinions were expressed out of deep patriotism. Now, we haven't talked about the definition of patriotism on this channel. Maybe that would be warranted sometime. But I think I can be excused for thinking that somebody that wants to fundamentally change this country and somebody that loves this country and wants it to be the best country that it can be are not automatically the same person. I mean, let me know if you think that I have the wrong understanding of patriotism, but I don't think that somebody that thinks that this country is great and wants it to be the greatest that it can be, and a person that wants to fundamentally transform the country are the same person just because they claim to be patriots. Let me skip on down. I want to see if I can get to a specific. Oh, okay. Here's one. Here's another admission by Strzok that he does not have a perfect memory. Strzok said that he doesn't remember sending the "Stop Trump" text, noting that it was late at night and in shorthand. Now, I'm assuming that they're talking about when Trump won the nomination, either when Trump won the nomination to become the Republican candidate, or when Trump won the election, and Strzok is saying we're going to stop him being inaugurated. I don't recall exactly the time period that this was. But as somebody that stayed up until late in the evening, I didn't stay up until a victor was declared, but I stayed up until it was late enough that I figured that I knew what the outcome of the election was. But I went to bed before it had been called. And I was not tired. I can remember the details. I can't remember specifically the number of electoral votes that had been called for each candidate, but I remember that it wasn't looking good for Hillary. I remember telling my wife that I wanted to stay up, but it was just too late. I had to go to sleep. I didn't send any text messages that evening because it was too late in the evening. I wasn't going to text any of my friends that I assumed were also asleep. But for an event like that, your memory is a little bit better than, I can't remember telling somebody that I was going to stop it, quote unquote it. Strzok asserted the suggestion that I, in some dark chamber of the FBI, would somehow cast aside these procedures and somehow be able to do this is astounding to me. Now, I don't think that that this suggestion is astounding. If you've ever seen somebody get into a fit of rage, you'll notice that they do things that they would not normally do. If you've ever been in a fit of rage, you probably did something that you wouldn't under normal circumstances do. You probably you might call them procedures that you've laid out for yourself, that you've promised to yourself that you're not going to do certain things under any circumstances. And yet in a fit of rage, you might do something that you would, under any other circumstances, would never do. Or perhaps in a fit of desperation, thinking that there's no solution good for you unless you do this thing that you swore you'd never do. And Peter Strzok has already told us on 2 different occasions that he doesn't have a perfect memory. So maybe he just doesn't remember casting aside these procedures. Oh, here's a delicious one. Strzok maintained that bias was not, quote-unquote, expressed in those text messages. Quote, I can tell you that those text messages are not indicative of bias, Strzok said. Text messages, like the ones that Bob Goodlatte would rattle off in a later statement during his time in this hearing, where Strzok said, expletive Trump. I just walked out of a Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. Calling Trump an idiot, calling Trump a travesty, saying all sorts of things about Trump, saying that he was going to stop it, referring to Trump's campaign. Strzok obviously has a different definition of bias from every other American in the United States. I love this blurb right here. You know that you're on... It feels good to hear politicians saying things that you've been saying, or that your team has been saying. You know that they're on the right track. Bob Goodlatte says, to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, please replace President Trump's name with your own name in a small sample of things Mr. Strzok has said. Envision how you would feel if you found out that the chief agent investigating you as a member of Congress was making these comments. And I wish that Goodlatte would have said Clinton or Hillary instead of Trump in all of these things. Or maybe one of the other congressmen or women that was there with him. You know, imagine Strzok texting, Clinton is a disaster. Just went to a northern New York Walmart. I could smell the Clinton support. Or we'll stop her. I mean, imagine... you can hear, I can see the tweets of Democrats and left-wing media pundits coming unglued out of their skin with outrage that an FBI agent investigating their darling presidential candidate was saying these things. There's one last quote that I wanted to see was in this was in this story. Here it is again. This isn't what I was looking for, but I want to pause on it here. Remember, Strzok has admitted on at least 2 and probably more occasions that he does not have a perfect memory. And yet he can perfectly remember that, quote, not once in my 26 years of defending my nation did my personal opinions impact any official action I took, says the man with an imperfect memory. Yet he can remember perfectly every single professional decision that he made for 26 years. Now, I haven't had a 26-year-long career. Since I graduated from college, I've been working for 2+ years. 2 years and some change. Am I at 3 years? No, 2 years and some change. And I can't remember every single professional decision that I've made. Any official action that I took. I can't remember every official action that I took. And I've been working for 2 years. I refuse to believe that Strzok can remember with perfect clarity every single professional decision that he's made for 26 years. I cannot believe it. There's one last quote, and I'm just going to scroll down through here. It's not in this column, but Strzok was having an exchange with a congressman concerning his reliability or his integrity. And it was concerning his affair with then FBI lawyer Lisa Page. Now, Strzok is married to a woman who is not Lisa Page. And yet, he would have us to believe that he is a pillar of integrity, that he embodies fidelity, bravery, and integrity, which is the motto of the FBI. And when confronted with this fact, when confronted with the fact that for however long the affair lasted, Strzok was lying to his wife about being involved with another woman, Strzok remarked, I believe it was Gowdy that was making this, that was pointing this out. Strzok remarked, Mr. Chairman, that's outrageous. And if I had been Chairman Gowdy at that moment, I would have said, really? Really? Is it really outrageous? Is it really outrageous of me to assume that you lied to the person that you swore, most likely to Almighty God, that you would be faithful to? Is it really outrageous of me to assume that since you lied to her, you would lie to someone else? that you might lie, even under oath, again, to Almighty God, to this, what's the word I'm looking for? To this chamber, to this council. What's the word that I'm looking for? To this board. That's still not the word. Maybe it is the word. Committee, there's the word. Is it really outrageous of me to assume that you lying to your wife might mean that you might lie to your boss or to this committee? You tell me what you think, audience. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. Hit subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss future videos. Make sure that you're checking back every weekday just in case there are some shenanigans going on with YouTube and your subscription feed. I again thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Until then, good night and God bless.